Welcome to Solar Oregon's How to Go Solar and Storage workshop. My name is Nicole and I'm a program manager at Solar Oregon. We've been delivering this workshop for over 15 years, and Solar Oregon has been around since 1979, promoting solar and renewable energy. Today we're going to cover how solar works, if your home is right for solar, and what are some aspects that can help you decide that, energy storage, available incentives, and how you can get started. A little bit about Solar Oregon. We're a 501c3 nonprofit that has worked to encourage solar and storage adoption throughout the state for over 45 years. And we do this by providing reliable and impartial education about solar and storage. We do this in workshops like this one. We also do in-person workshops and community events and help host Solarize campaigns throughout the state. And then we have our annual Go Zero tour coming up. So I'll share a little bit more about that later. And then we are a member-based nonprofit. So if you are interested in becoming a member, here's some information about that. And thank you to our existing members for helping make our education programs possible. All right, upcoming events. So we do have quite a few events coming up. So I did mention the Go Zero tour. That's going to be in October. So we'll be promoting that in the next few months. So you'll see that pop up on our events page. And it is a tour of homes that are on their path to zero or zero energy. And so we'll have a virtual portion as well as an on-site portion. This year, our on-site locations are going to be in Southeast Portland, and then we also have a couple in Lake Oswego. And then we do a green energy series every month. This is run by some of our great volunteers, and the topic for the one coming up this weekend is going to be making solar affordable through peer-to-peer loans. So learning a little bit more about the organization Sold Seed. And another upcoming event is our Solar Social. So that's an in-person event right in Portland where we can connect, talk about upcoming relevant events in solar and storage, network with industry professionals, folks who work at nonprofits, and also other people in the community who are just interested and excited about solar and storage. And then this workshop series is supported by Energy Trust of Oregon. Energy Trust is an independent nonprofit established in 2002 that provides resources that help customers learn about energy efficiency and solar and access incentives for those. They also started offering an incentive for home battery storage, and so that's really exciting. So thank you, Energy Trust. All right, and then just a little housekeeping. Um, this is a webinar, so any questions you have, put in the Q&A so we don't miss them. If you have any technical difficulties, feel free to put those in the chat. I will also be posting resources that I discussed here today in the chat as well. And I'll post those a couple times throughout the webinar so that you can access them. All right, so now we'll get right into how solar works. Here is a diagram of the system components, and you can see the photovoltaic panel or solar panel can sometimes be called PV, so that's good to know when you're trying to look through quotes. And that will actually collect the energy from the sun, and it is in a current called DC or direct current, but then needs to be converted because your home uses AC or alternating current. So the inverter or microinverter is actually what will do that. And then that alternating current then will go to the outlets in your home and can power your appliances. And then when you get solar and are a grid tied system, this is an example of a grid tied system, you actually get a special utility meter called a bidirectional meter that'll measure the flow of electricity that you produce and send back out to the grid. And then in times where your system might not be producing to match your consumption and you can pull from the grid, it'll measure what you pull from the grid as well. So let's take a closer look at inverters. You can see the white box there is an example of a string inverter. So that's where you have one inverter connected to your array of panels. And this is pretty common. Also, there are microinverters, and microinverters are the small black boxes you can see at the back of the panels there. And those are usually connected to 1 to 3 panels. Both of these do work well. It just depends on your roof space, shade, things like that, other factors, and cost. Solar installers will use either or. Some solar installers might specialize in one over the other. So it's good to know the differences. All right, there are different types of mounting as well. More common in the cities in Oregon, you'll see roof-mounted solar on businesses as well as homes. And then there is another option of ground mounting, which you might see more in an agricultural setting, or if folks have a lot more access to solar resource on their land as opposed to on their roof, which might be shaded by trees. A newer technology is solar roof tiles, and there are some contractors that specialize in these, and they are not just a solar panel; they're also a roofing product. So it will do both. It'd be your roof and would also help you access that solar energy. They can be pretty expensive, so that's something to keep in mind. And not all installers are certified to install solar roof tiles. Usually there's special training, so be sure to ask your installers if that's something they do. And if you're interested in it, try to get a few references from some of the solar roof tile installs that they have done. All right, net metering. So when I talked about that bidirectional meter, that is tied to a system called net metering, and that is a process that measures the flow of electricity out from your home and through the grid, and then it will give you credit for any energy that you send back out onto the grid. And so an example of a month where you might gain credits is going to be a summer month where you can produce more solar because there's more sun out here in Oregon at that time. And it might be more than you would consume at your house. And so that little green arrow is just showing that difference. And so that difference in what you produced is going to be your net metering credit earned. The net metering month starts, or year actually starts April 1st, so that you can build up more credits when it's sunny. So during those sunny summer months, and it can help you pull from those credits when it is a winter month. And so there's an example here of a winter month where you might be consuming more than you're actually producing because it's either cloudy or rainy. And you can see here that you'd have to pull from the grid. So that's an advantage of having a grid tied system, is that if you do need to consume more, you are connected and you can draw from the grid when you need it. And so, like I mentioned, the net metering year starts April 1st and it actually ends March 31st. And so when it ends, any credits that you have banked that you have not used actually will get donated to low income customers. All right, and so here's an example of what your bill might look like if you are grid tied and building up those net metering credits. So you can see here that'll have your start of the meter read, your end of the meter read, and the times for those, and then it'll show your consumption, so what you used, as well as any excess generation. And then it'll look at the difference. So actually here, this customer actually produced more than they used. So they have an extra 327 kilowatt hours that they can add to their year-to-date banked credits. And so again, they can pull from those credits as they need. Let's say on a month where their solar doesn't produce enough for what they consume, they can pull from those. And so it's really nice to be able to build those up when it's sunny outside. And then you might ask, why is the bill not zero? Well, that is just for the interconnection fees. So if you are a grid tie system, you will be connected to the grid so that you can pull energy if you're consuming more than you're producing. And Usually that ranges from about 12 to $18, depending on your location and utility. Yeah, but the $12 or $18 is a lot less than an average utility bill, which in Oregon can be anywhere from $70 to $200, depending on the household. All right, so system size is based on how much energy you consume. Um, Solar is actually measured in kilowatts. So you'll hear things like a 5 kilowatt system or a 9 kilowatt system. And so that is how many panels you have and how much it's able to produce from those panels. And the average size in Oregon is about 8 kilowatts. And this can range depending on if you're consuming less, maybe you don't need such a big system, or if you're consuming more, maybe you need to have a larger system with battery backup so that you can load those batteries with any excess generation and be able to pull from the batteries as well. All right, so there are a few factors that will weigh in to help you decide if your home is right for solar. The first is having access to the sun. So you want a good, nice south facing roof. You can have an east or west facing roof too, as well. We often won't see solar installed on north facing roofs. And so basically, you need access to the sun to make solar. But solar does work in Oregon, and we're getting more people who are getting installs and are getting excited about their systems, even in the southern part of Oregon, even in the coastal part of Oregon. Fort George actually is installing a brewery, and Astoria is installing a huge solar array to help power their brewery and taking and adopting some cleaner principles to make their processes more sustainable. So it does work. And one thing you do need is access to the sun. So if you have shade, you live in a place that has a lot of big trees, maybe solar might not be the best option because you're not able to access that sun. Um, but trees are good. They're great. They provide you shade, keep your house cool. You can still participate in solar in other ways. There are programs called community solar programs, and those um, allow folks to still be part of a larger solar project, but you don't need to have the panels installed on your home. This is also a great option for renters. Right. And then roof complexity. So a simpler roof is going to be easier to install. If you have a super steep roof, sometimes that can create challenges and increase cost. So if you have a simpler roof without super steep pitches, that's going to be best. And the largest factor that's going to impact if your home is right for solar is the condition of your roof. So solar panels can last up to 20, 25 years. Um, and so if your roof needs to be replaced, let's say you only have 5 years of life left on that roof, you'd have to uninstall and then reinstall the solar to repair your roof. So it's really best to have good roof life so that you're matching that with the life of your system. Roof structure can also impact your ability to go solar. And you can have rafters or trusses. You just need to have the appropriate engineering that's required to support the panels. So, and solar installers can help you take a look at that. If your home does need more engineering or reinforcement, that can range from $2,000 to $5,000. It just depends on your home. All right, so we talked a little bit about solar, and it's becoming more common as we're experiencing more outages for folks to want to also pair that solar with storage. So a little bit about energy resilience. It's your ability to access power even when the grid is down. So solar makes storage more effective and vice versa. So you can actually charge your batteries with your solar and be able to pull from those. Here's an example of what it might look like if you had a solar paired system that had storage. Oftentimes they're in a garage, the batteries are in a garage, or they could be on the side of the house. It just depends Solar systems are highly modular, so there's a lot of options for customizations, and they definitely all don't look alike. So it's going to depend on what your needs are, your consumption, and also what you have available to you. So if you have more roof space, you might have a larger system. And yeah, those are some super important factors to consider. And why is energy resilience important? As I mentioned earlier, we're experiencing more outages across Oregon. Some of those short outages are just from critters like squirrels who might be getting into electrical, or um, just minor outages that might just be brief. But we are seeing more public safety power shutoffs with fires, and as fire danger increases, we are likely to see more public safety power shutoffs. And then there is also the potential of the Cascadia seismic hazard and having that large earthquake impact Oregon, that could take out power for a really long time, especially in rural areas. So a little bit more about picking a battery. We're thinking about energy resilience. um, we definitely have to look at consumption again, and you want to match how many batteries you're attaching to your system to what you think you're trying to withstand. So if you're just trying to keep the lights on for like a day or so, you probably would need a couple batteries to do that. And we'll talk a little bit more on some options about that later. There are a ton of brands of batteries on the market. With different chemistries. Lithium iron phosphate is becoming more and more popular. And one thing to remember is if you go with one brand of battery and you decide to add another battery, you want to stay within the same brand so that they work better together. And then if you were thinking about having a generator, or powering anything that needs instantaneous energy, you're going to want to let your contractor know so that they can help plan that in the design. All right, so this is the options for backup. You could do whole home backup, which is huge. It's usually not um, inexpensive to do that, because to back up your whole home, jacuzzi and all, that's going to take a lot of energy. And so you need a lot of batteries to do that. And then also a lot of access to sun to keep recharging those batteries. But there is another option where you can just do a partial backup, which can help bring down the cost of backup so you don't need as many batteries, and you can really use the system you have to just power the essentials. So some folks will choose things like a light, some outlets in a common room so they can recharge phones, laptops, and then the refrigerator. And if you do a partial backup, the contractor might need to install something called an essential loads panel, which will be breakers that they move over that are going to be attached to your battery that you've decided to back up. There's also smart panels now and some other options, so you don't always need a second panel. And then system sizing, you want to consider what needs power and for how long, and really think about, what type of outage you're looking to endure. And then when you install solar, um, the system design definitely impacts the price. Um, as we discussed, there's different types of electricities. Um, Batteries, just like solar panels, use DC, while your home uses AC. And there are different batteries that you can do to give you different options depending on what your needs for your system are. Batteries do require space. They can't just be put in a enclosed space like a cupboard or super small closet. And that's due to a national engineering code. It needs to be, or electrical code. It needs to be safe and adhere to that. Not all systems are as big as this one pictured here. This is a huge system. So there are different sizing options available. All right, incentives. Incentives do change really frequently, so it's good to come to updated webinars like this if you want to know what current incentives are. There is first the solar tax credit, or ITC, investment tax credit, and that has a 30% dollar for dollar. And it's a tax credit that you would get when you're filing your taxes. So it's not one that your installer would apply for you. You would be applying for it yourself. And so when you do your taxes at the end of the year, um, you would be applying for this credit with special forms. And it's always good to have a tax professional help you so it can make sure you are claiming the correct credit. Um, we are not tax professionals here at Solar Oregon. We just want to let you know what's available so that you don't miss the opportunity to access these incentives. So for this investment tax credit, you cannot claim re-roofing. So that's really important to remember. There's a lot of different information on the web about, oh yeah, you can claim re-roofing, but that is not true. So something to keep in mind. And then you would need to complete certain IRS forms. You can claim the tax credit over a few years if you don't have enough tax liability in that 1 year. And then you would just get this credit deducted from the taxes you owe. So it is nice that it could be over a few years. Another available incentive is the Energy Trust of Oregon Solar Incentive for PGE and Pacific Power customers. Some other utilities do have different credits, so it's always good to, or incentives and solar programs. So it's good to check with your local utility on what they offer if it's not PGE Pacific Power. And then there's also a storage incentive that Energy Trust offers. And so those really help bring down the initial cost. These incentives will be applied for by your installer. And one of the caveats to that is that the installer needs to be part of the Trade Ally network. So that means they're pre-vetted, they have a good reputation, and then they're part of this program where they can access these incentives. There is a income qualifying tax credit that's also offered by Energy Trust of Oregon. And for Pacific Power, you can see it's $1 per watt up to 6,000 for solar, and for storage, $7.50 up to 10,000. And then PGE is $1.20 per watt up to 7,200, and for storage, 1,000 per kilowatt hour up to 13,000. And so there's different income thresholds. And so an example would be if you're a household of four, the threshold is $120,252. So if you think you could be income qualifying, it's good to check this out and see if you can get those increased incentives. So costs can vary for a bunch of reasons. The biggest reason is that solar systems are super customizable and tend to be very different based on the needs of your home. So the size matters, if you need re-roofing or structural analysis, if you need any electrical panel upgrades too, that's something to keep in mind. And then what incentives you're able to access are going to impact that cost. And that's very similar with storage too, things that might impact the cost of having home battery storage. And then, if you decide to add an additional panel, that's going to increase the cost. And then the number of batteries and brand will also impact your cost. So we're going to look at a couple example budgets for if you're installing solar, and then if you're installing solar plus storage. And you can see that here we have some different customer types. So this is assuming that you got an 8 kilowatt solar system, you're doing solar only, and it'd be around $32,000. That initial cost can vary. Again, it depends on the location. If you have a really steep roof, sometimes that cost is increased because the cost of labor is more. But these are just to kind of get some ideas. And so You can see if you are able to access the Energy Trust incentive, that can bring down your cost from $1,000 to $7,000, depending on what utility you're part of and if you're able to access income qualifying credits. And then you can see as well um, the solar tax credit. So that comes later. It doesn't impact your out-of-pocket costs. You still would need to pay that out-of-pocket cost. But then when you're applying for your taxes, you could access that federal tax credit, which is 30% dollar for dollar. And you can see that you're decreasing with all of those incentives, you're decreasing your costs like 10,000 or even $16,000. If you got solar and storage, your initial cost is going to be more. This is assuming still an 8 kilowatt solar system, but with a 13 kilowatt hour battery. And so your cost might be closer to $52,000. And then there are some additional incentives for batteries. So that's why you see those Energy Trust incentives go up. And you can also get the 30% tax credit on home battery storage as well. So when you apply to that, if you are doing solar paired storage, you can get that 30% dollar for dollar for both the solar and storage. And then this is if you were to add storage after you got your solar. So some things to think about. If you add them together, you can usually access some of those initial incentives. Plus, the system design is cohesive and planned for the battery. If you are to add it later, sometimes you need to refigure your system in order to add that battery. But you can still access incentives for it. So that is an option. If you already have solar, but have been thinking about storage for a long time, there are some good storage incentives out there right now. So it might be a good time to add. So there are different options for financing. Financing is common. Oftentimes it's more loans here in Oregon. And also installers might have a bank they partner with to do solar loans. It's also good to check your local bank since you're a partner, already a customer there. They might partner with you or have a better program. So good to check those resources. If you want to dive a little bit deeper into financing a system and looking at quotes, we do have another webinar that we do monthly called Comparing Solar Quotes. So keep an eye out for that one, and we'll do a deeper dive into financing and quotes. And then how do you get started? So to get the most out of those incentives, you're going to want to access the Energy Trust incentives and that tax credit incentive. So to get the Energy Trust incentives, you have to work with a trade ally. And what is nice about the Trade Ally Network is they are pre-vetted contractors. They're familiar with these incentives. And a lot of times they're local companies. And then if you are ready to connect with a contractor, Energy Trust has a bid tool, which I'm going to go ahead and throw in the chat, and also throw it in the chat at the end. And this also has other links to Community Solar, but has that Energy Trust bid tool, and that's really going to help you connect with those trade allies. So you put in some information on, what you're looking for, what your location is, and they will connect you with contractors that serve your area. And then installation. So installation is pretty quick for solar panels, which is really exciting. The part that does take longer is the permitting piece. So permitting can take anywhere from 2 to 12 months. It depends on what county you're in. Multnomah County tends to have longer permitting processes. They are working on trying to make that system more simplified. But if you're in some other counties, you could see faster turnaround times. And installation is 1 to 4 days. So if you have a really easy system going up, it's going to be 1 to 2 days. If you're installing a larger system and including battery backup, that could take that 4-day mark. But you can also check with your contractor too. Once they share that design with you, um, you can go over like estimated times, things like that. They'll have a good idea of what that's at when you are looking to go solar.